Hola a todos. Hoy vamos a hablar de la voz pasiva en español. So today we are going to be talking about the passive voice, la voz pasiva. So when I say voice, what do I mean? Voice refers to the way in which, voz refers to the way in which the subject is expressed in a sentence. If the subject appears at the start of the sentence, then the sentence is said to be in the active voice, la voz activa, okay? Because traditionally, we express sentences like that. Subject, verb, object. So when we place emphasis on the subject, it appears at the start, right? So when I say voice, that's what I mean. The passive voice now reverses that order, and we have the object, verb, and then the subject, right? So let's get into the passive voice. The passive voice refers to a construction wherein importance is taken away from the subject. Okay. So when we want to construct a sentence that removes attention from the subject, we use the passive voice. But how do we remove this attention? In passive sentences, the subject can appear at the end of the sentence. So right. Remember I told you if the active voice, the subject appears at the start. Well, in the passive voice, the subject appears at the end. So we know that major changes have to occur, okay? So yes, but when it comes to the passive voice is mainly used in the methodology section in lab reports. But in everyday life, we do not use the passive voice, right? We would more use the active voice because the active voice is more direct, right? But it's still good to know how to form it or how to identify it, okay? So there are two ways that the passive voice is formed in Spanish. We have ser, the past participle of the verb, por, and the agent. So this is the first structure. And it is also worth noting that the por and the agent, this part is optional. We do not actually have to include that because we can include the subject or we can choose not to include it. We have that liberty when it comes to the use of the passive voice, right? If we want to include an agent, then we use por followed by the agent, okay? So ser must be conjugated according to the same, ser must be conjugated in the same tense as the verb of the active voice, right? And it must agree with the object in terms of number, of course, okay? Because remember, the object is going to appear at the start in the passive construction. The past participle must agree with the object in terms of number and gender, right? And then, of course, we have por and the agent. But remember, this is optional. And we're going to see examples, of course. So, no se preocupen. The second construction is that we use se followed by the third person form of the verb. And the number of the object will determine whether we use the singular form or the plural form. I should also mention that the tense of the verb has to agree with has to be the same as the tense used in the active voice. So if the present was used in the active voice, or the present tense was used in the active voice, then the third person form must be in the present tense. Okay? Bueno, let's look at some examples. So we start with the active sentence, and then I'm going to show you the two examples of, or the two ways in which the passive voice can be constructed. Okay? So, yo manejo el coche. I drive the car. Let's first identify the tense of the verb, which is going to be the present tense. This comes from the verb manejar, to drive. And we have to identify the object, which is el coche. Okay, so el coche, if you're using ser, el coche would be singular, so we say es, and we are talking about the present tense, so es. Manejado, because the car is masculine and singular. Por mí. If we use por, then it has to be me. It can't be yo, because this is object position. So, mí. Right? El coche es manejado por mí. The car is driven by me. Like I said, I don't have to include por mí, but yeah. So always remember, if you want to include an agent, you must use this structure, right? But if you don't want to include the agent, you can use either one, right? Secondly, se maneja el coche. The car is driven. So as you see, manejar has been conjugated in the third person singular because el coche is singular, and it is in the present tense, of course, because the original verb, or the verb of the active voice, or the verb that was used in the active sentence was in the present tense, right? So let's look at some more examples, and we are going to look at the tenses, right? So I'm going to use the same structure. I will start with the active voice and then show you the two passive sentences. Of course, the first example will exemplify the use of ser, and the second example will exemplify the use of se, okay? María mira la televisión. Maria watches television. Our verb is in the present tense. Our object is singular and feminine. Therefore, la televisión es mirada. Perdón. La televisión es mirada por Maria. Television is watched by Maria. It sounds awkward, but like I said, this is not the way we speak generally, okay? So it sounds weird. We normally would use the active voice. But grammatically, this is acceptable. Se mira la televisión. Television is watched. So we have mira in the third person singular because we have televisión, which is singular, and it is conjugated in the present tense because we are talking about a present tense verb, right? Sigamos. The preterite. Ayer besé a Susana. Yesterday I kissed Susana. Okay, the tense has changed, so we have to make some changes. If we use ser, ayer, Susana, okay, fue, because we're talking about the preterite now. Fue besada, because Susana would be feminine, right? Por mí, right? And of course, I did not have to put yo because the conjugation of the verb would reveal the subject, right? If I use se, ayer se besó a María. Yesterday, Maria was kissed. Now, pay attention here. Fíjense. If I use se with a person is the object. And I want to use se. I always use the third person singular, even if the object is plural, okay? I use the third person singular. And I have to use a because the person is the object, right? So you can't say se besó María. No. Se besó a María. Yes. Another example. Otro ejemplo. Se mató a los hombres. The men were killed. We don't say se mataron los hombres. Se mató a los hombres. Right? Even though hombres would be plural, we use the singular form. The singular third person conjugation. And of course that will depend, the tense will depend on the verb that was used in the active voice. But we always use the third person singular and we use the a. So just remember that when we're talking about when a person is the object and we want to use se, that construction. Okay? Right. But if that's too difficult, then you should just stick to the ser, because then you wouldn't have to worry about that. Right? Yes. Future. Los maestros leerán nuestro libro. The teachers will read our book. So we have the future tense and we have a singular object and it's masculine. So nuestro libro será leído por los maestros. Our book will be read by the teachers. Yep. Likewise, se leerá nuestro libro. Our book will be read. That's right. So this formation isn't too difficult, but you just need to remember the rule when it comes to say, right, with persons. You need to remember that we always use a third person singular and we need the personal a. Okay? Vale? Sigamos. So we continue. We have the present perfect. Tú has completado la tarea. You have completed the task. La tarea ha sido completada por ti. So we have the present perfect, so we utilize haber sido, yes, completada because the object is singular and feminine, por ti. And of course, tú becomes ti in object position, right? So the task has been completed by you. If we want to use se ha completado la tarea. The task has been completed. So we use se and we just use the same form pretty much. Ha completado la tarea. Completado would not have to agree with gender. That would be a past participle. So that would stay like that. In this context, se ha completado la tarea. The task has been completed. Past perfect. Las chicas habían visto la película. The girls had seen the film. Okay? So, la película había sido vista por las chicas. The film had been seen by the girls. Similarly, se había visto la película. The film had been seen. So these would be the remaining two tenses that we are going to, these are the two remaining tenses that we're going to look at today. So this brings us to the end of the, let's say the teaching segment. Okay? Now is, pardon. Now it is time for a quiz. So we move on to the quiz. Convert the following sentences to the passive voice. Naturally, this means that these sentences are constructed in the active voice. Número 1. Juan tocó el piano. So, we have the preterite. So, Juan played the piano. If we use ser, it would be el piano fue tocado por Juan. The piano was played by Juan. Or se tocó el piano. The piano was played. Yep. Let me just that. Right. 2. Los profesores castigarán a los alumnos. So we have the future tense. So the teachers will punish the students. All right? We can have los alumnos serán castigados por los profesores. The students will be punished by the teachers. Conversely, remember if we use se, we have to use the third person singular along with the personal a. So se castigará a los alumnos. The students will be punished. That's right. Número 3. Messi había ganado todos los premios. Había ganado, that is an example of the past perfect. Messi had won all the awards. So we can have todos los premios habían sido ganados por Messi. So all the awards had been won by Messi. Or we could have se habían ganado todos los premios. All the awards had been won. ¿Vale? Hemos llegado al final de este video. Espero que ustedes hayan entendido este tema. Muchas gracias por ver y nos vemos.